A US blockade of Iranian ports comes into force as Tehran warns of retaliation. President Trump claims Iran wants a deal to end the war very badly. Hezbollah's leader calls for upcoming talks between Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors to be cancelled. President Trump doubles down on his criticism of Pope Leo, calling him weak and wrong on law and order issues, as the Pope says he does not fear the Trump administration.
I think he's very weak on crime and other things, so I'm not. I mean, he went public. I'm just responding to Pope Leo. There's nothing to apologize for. He's wrong.
US President Donald Trump on Monday threatened to impose a 50% tariff on China after US media reports suggested that Beijing is preparing to send weapons shipments to Iran. The US leader said he was hearing reports that China was considering supplying Tehran with anti-aircraft missiles. China's foreign ministry dismissed the reports as baseless and said it has a responsible approach to arms exports.
Former NATO Secretary-General and Labour Defence Secretary Lord Robertson launches a scathing attack on the government's handling of defence, warning the country's security is in peril.
As he feuds with the Pope, Donald Trump deletes this post of an image depicting himself as a Jesus-like figure amid a growing backlash.
Tonight at 6, the UK is predicted to be the hardest hit of the world's major economies because of the war in Iran. Fuel protests in Northern Ireland today as prices soar. The IMF says the UK is particularly vulnerable because of its reliance on imported energy.
And all of this as a former head of NATO says the government is complacent about our national security. The thing is, it's trickier to spend more on defence when the economy is struggling.
Well, all eyes are on the Strait of Hormuz after the US blockade came into effect yesterday afternoon. They're trying to stop Iran's oil tankers from going into and out of ports in Iran after peace talks ended without agreement at the weekend. China has condemned the US blockade as dangerous and irresponsible. Our security correspondent Frank Gardner is here. You've been monitoring what's going on. How blockaded is it?
I think it's pretty blockaded. It's a blockade on top of a blockade. It's a very fluid and dynamic situation. So CENTCOM, that's the part of the US military that deals with the Middle East, have put out a communique a few hours ago saying it's working. Not a single Iranian ship has been able, or Iran-linked vessel has been able to break out of the blockade. In fact, they have turned back 6 vessels. Now, that appeared to go contrary to some of the maritime tracking data that we saw that appeared to show 4 vessels had called at Iranian ports, but those, I think at least 2 of those have been turned back. So I've spoken to a naval expert who said, look, CENTCOM have got absolutely the latest possible intelligence on this. Satellite, commercial, human intelligence, and they will be able to see through any so-called spoofing of transponder gadgets that the ships may have where they're trying to pretend they're somewhere they're not.
Good evening. UK growth will be hit harder than that of any other major leading economy by the impact of the Iran war, the International Monetary Fund warned today. It had predicted the UK economy would grow by 1.3%. Today, that was slashed to 0.8% this year. And inflation is set to hit 3.2%. Our economics editor Joel Hills is at a petrol station in central London. Joel, a pretty grim warning from the IMF, and this all comes down to the surge in energy prices.
It does, Mary, but let's remember forecasting is a mug's game, and that even at the best of times, you've got to allow some latitude. The IMF has been looking through the numbers. It judges that the UK is particularly vulnerable, partly because our dependence on natural gas to heat our homes, to generate electricity, and, of course, the comparative lack of gas storage. It is actually saying that this energy shock we face is likely to be not as big as the one that we faced when Russia invaded Ukraine 4 years ago. But it's also assuming the conflict will be short-lived. What happens next is as unpredictable as Donald Trump. And it does have the potential, of course, to tip countries all over the world into recession. Tonight, the Chancellor is on her way to Washington for the IMF meeting, under pressure to do something for households and businesses back home. But the IMF is warning that some countries cannot afford to be generous.
Price caps, subsidies and similar interventions are popular, but they distort prices. They're often poorly designed, hard to unwind, and extremely costly. Most countries don't have that luxury anymore.
During the last energy crisis, the previous government decided to subsidise the energy bills of every household in Britain at great expense and using borrowed money. The Chancellor is already stating clearly she is not going to be giving that sort of support this time around. But support is on the way because, as the IMF makes clear, even if the war ends tomorrow, there will be lasting economic damage. Tonight, Mary, the RAC says it thinks that prices at the pump have probably peaked for now, as long as the oil price doesn't take another leg north. But this is just the beginning of a wave of inflation that is now building.
OK, Joel Hills, thank you. Well, the financial impact of the Iran war has led to fuel protests in Northern Ireland today. A slow-moving convoy of tractors caused major traffic disruption as demonstrators called for government action on spiralling energy costs. Here's our Northern Ireland reporter, Stuart Robson.
Tractors and trucks, tail to tail, protesting against rising costs hitting hauliers and farmers on the road linking Belfast and Dublin. Well, it's taken around 10 minutes for tractors and lorries like this one to make their way from one end of the A1 towards Belfast down to where we are. This protest is causing significant disruption, keeping traffic moving very slowly. A conflict thousands of miles away has led to scenes like this. Those in industries asking for help say it's needed quickly.
Put this way, I could see a lot of companies going bust within, if it's not resolved, in the next months.
If anyone was rushing for a flight at Belfast City Airport this morning, this is what they faced. The main dual carriageway was as slow as a baggage conveyor belt.
We don't mean to cause anybody any harm or anything. We're only here just to try and put our point over and trying to make a point.
Rural locations saw protests too, including in Omagh in County Tyrone and Toome in County Londonderry. Similar scenes, but not on the same scale to what happened in the Republic of Ireland last week. A €505 million package was announced by its government to address the crisis, one that transcends borders and industries. Stuart Robson, ITV News.
Next, Lebanese communities across London say they are still in shock following a series of deadly bombings after the country was drawn into the Iran war. Here in the capital, it's left families fearing for loved ones thousands of miles away. Israel says it targeted Hezbollah-linked sites. For many here, though, the focus is on those caught up in the conflict. Lakshmi Gopal has been to meet one Londoner affected.
Jamal Awar is a filmmaker studying in the UK while living in fear for his loved ones in Lebanon.
Literally all my family are back home. I've got my mum, my dad, my sister, my cats, 4 cats, all my friends, and yeah, they're all in harm's way right now.
How does it feel knowing that?
It feels horrible knowing that. I'm not under threat, but everyone I love and everything I love is, so it's that kind of weird space to live in, really.
Under the latest escalation in a decades-long conflict, more than 2,000 people have been killed in Lebanon by Israeli attacks since March, and 1 in 5 people have been forced out of their homes, according to the Lebanese government. Israel's authorities say during that period, 12 Israeli soldiers and 2 civilians were killed by Hezbollah. Despite diplomatic talks planned in the US today, fighting has intensified.
And how are your parents feeling?
My parents are anxious all the time. They're super anxious about the continuing war, the Israeli planes that fly daily above their heads. They don't know if this is the time when they drop the bomb or not. There has been bombing not long ago in Metin, 20-minute drive from where my parents live, and 3 people died.
Jamal knows loss already. In 2023, a Reuters investigation established that an Israeli tank crew killed Issam Abdallah, one of their journalists and Jamal's close friend.
In Lebanon, he was the first of many journalists that have died since 2023. And he was someone that was very helpful for me in my career. He was always there. He was that kind of a friend who's just giving and altruistic, and now he's gone. He's been killed, and it's heartbreaking. Every day, it's heartbreaking. Your friends just thinning. You know, the numbers are thinning one day at a time. It's like, yes, it's like. It's a horrible image to live with, especially that the threat is not gone.
As the war continues, so does the fear among those in Lebanon and the wider region, and their loved ones thousands of miles away. Lakshmi Gopal, BBC London.
And a reminder, you can get continuing coverage on the conflict in the Middle East and those ongoing talks on our website and the BBC News app.